trip. Hey, everybody, how's it going? Is everybody over here sitting down? Those lights are remarkably bright and aim perfectly at my eyes. Well, welcome to Sunday night, everybody. Good to see you guys here. Hey, we have a few very important announcements for you guys. The first one is, hey, Ben, go to announcements. Psst, go to announcements, Ben. Oh, yeah, Winter One Day. Woo! Wow, that was enthusiastic. Let me try again. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, Winter One Day's coming up. There we go. So, in case you haven't heard, there's something going on that's causing everything to cancel. And in the everything, that includes all winter camps. There were some winter camps. One of them was doing a one-day kind of get there in the morning, leave in the evening, and they wanted $100 to do that. And I'm like, we paid like 120 for the whole weekend last year, so nope. So we said we can do it ourselves. So we are going to do it ourselves. On February 6th, we want you guys here at the church. We are bringing in a special guest speaker, someone who does not work at the church, someone who's not, I've never even met him, but I've seen videos of him speaking, and he is really, really good. We have a guest worship leader and possibly an entire guest band. We're going to have a band. I'm just not sure who the whole band is. We will feed you breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And the people that are doing the food for us, we said, for breakfast, just bring like some muffins and cereal, and then we'll just have, a casual breakfast. And they're all, oh, no. We're doing like French toast and sausages and eggs and the whole wingding. So come hungry. We're going to have loads of food. We'll also give you a long sleeve t-shirt that comes with the night. We're going to have tournaments. We're going to have all kinds of fun games. You guys will have plenty of free time. We're going to meet in small groups. We're going to do like chapel time. It's going to be really, really fun. What I need you to do right now, well, not right now, when this night is over, go to exit83youth.com and please sign up, because I need to let the people know that are making you the French toast how much French toast they need to make. And I also need to order the shirts. So if you could sign up ASAP, I would very much appreciate it. All right, next we have Exit 83 hoodies. Let's see, we have Tate, we have Fat Manklin. Oh, Eric. All right, all three of you stand up. Please stand up. There we go. All right, and everybody's seen them, but that's okay. Model, turn around. We have Fat Manklin. We have Tate wearing the green. We have Eric striking a pose in his brown one over there. We typically sell these on Wednesday nights. If you guys want one tonight, let me know. I'd be happy to get you one. They are $25, and they are soft and warm and squishy. So next we have study hall. Study halls have been changed to just Tuesdays from 8 to 4. With Jeff being gone and me having a real job, I cannot commit to being here all day Thursdays. And so if you're mad that study hall's canceled on Thursdays, yell at me about it. So, but we are still going on Tuesdays, so be here from 8 to 4. Wi-Fi is good. And it's a good place to get your homework done and work on school stuff as well as see some friends. So encourage you guys to be here on Tuesdays, 8 to 4. And wear your masks if you don't mind. I know it seems a pest. Believe it or not, there's something going around right now. It's making a lot of people very, 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 very sick. Some people not so very sick. But let's not risk it. If you guys wouldn't mind, when you're up mingling around, just put your masks on. Thank you so much. Okay. Hello and welcome. So we have changed Sunday nights a little bit while Jeff is on sabbatical. I've been praying for months about what to do on Sunday nights. We talked and we prayed and we considered maybe we shouldn't do Sunday nights. And I said, it just doesn't feel right. Neither Jeff nor I felt like it was right to just cancel Sunday nights. So I feel like God was just kind of saying, you do detour groups, you do small group stuff. Why don't you do some bigger small group stuff? So the way we're going to kind of structure, not every week, but some weeks of Sunday night is we're going to have tables set up. Ooh, that was a big thump, wasn't it? We're going to have tables set up, and we'll talk about the message that they do on Sunday mornings. I'll give you just kind of a brief overview of what we did, what passages we're going to do. You have the opportunity to go in the morning and listen to Dan preach, and if you're not there, they're also online where you can kind of catch up to the whole message. And we're just going to discuss what happened on Sunday mornings. I'm really excited about it. I really feel like God is going to use this time for us, as this isn't quite as big a group as we have on Wednesdays. I think it's going to be a really good time to connect with each other and to just get a little more of an intimate feeling with God. So I'm super excited. I hope you guys are too. And I know it's going to be different. There's not going to be worship through music every week. I'm not going to deliver a message every week. But man, every time in my detour groups or anytime we've done like table talk where on a Sunday morning or Sunday night, you guys give input, I learn so much from you guys. And I grow so much just from hearing what you guys talk about. So I'm really excited just to hear what you guys have on your heart and what you're learning. And that's another thing that this is a really good time for. You remember those on your heart things that we did? Where if God's speaking to you and you want to share it with others, Sunday nights are a great night for that. So there's one question that I I want to do every Sunday, just to ask you guys, and so it keeps you thinking about God throughout the entire week. So the question I'd like to ask is, how have you seen God move in your life this week? Ben's going to click on it. I know he is. I have faith. There it is. So how have you seen God move in your life this week? Now, I was thinking about this, and it's kind of like when you're driving somewhere. You drive somewhere like going to school every week or every day, right? And they're building some new apartment building or a new house or a new building of some sort. Every day you drive by and you're like, oh yeah, this is great, this is great, this is great. You see the same building. And then before you know it, the building's done. And you're like, oh, they built the building. As opposed to if you drive by that building like once a week, or you drive by the building like once every month, you notice these big dramatic changes, right? So you're like, man, last time I drove by that, there were no walls. Now there's a roof. And so I kind of feel like this question is something like that, where it doesn't have to be like, wow, God changed my life. He cured me of some incredibly rare disease or something. Sometimes we get in such a rhythm of, I've driven by it every day. God is in work in my life every day, but you don't really pay attention to it. You don't really pay attention to all the little things that God is doing in your life daily. So I want to encourage you guys throughout the next 3 months, and then after that 3 months, the rest of your life, to pay attention to this question. What has God been doing in your life this week? Because for all of us, when you share something that's going on in your life, it's kind of like driving by that building and going, oh my goodness, look at all the work that's happened on that. But to you, it seems like, oh, it's the same old thing because it's been going on every single day of your life. So I hope that you guys consider that, and I want to give you the opportunity now. If there's anybody that wants to share, what has God done in your life this week? I can share one just while you guys are thinking. I have been going through for many, well, actually my whole life, been going through a lot of time of self-doubt and a lot of self-esteem issues and not believing that I'm good enough, not believing that I am capable of most anything. And that comes about a lot when I'm asked to do something more than I typically do. And with Jeff leaving, I've had to step up and do some things that I don't typically do. And so, man, I've been praying, God, just give me the confidence to believe that you got this. And man, last Wednesday, I was like, I had so much to do. I was all freaked out about everything getting done and everything coming together. And I just, right before I came up and we worshiped, and I just asked God to take control. Just do it. I can't do this on my own. And boy, I really had this calm and peace. And God I felt the Spirit moving on Wednesday. And I was so incredibly encouraged. It was almost like just getting a big old hug from God on Wednesday. I really, really appreciated it. So how about you guys? Anybody else? Anybody have? And I got to be honest, I'm gonna call us out as Christians. If we don't see God moving in our life every week, there's something wrong. Now, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody because I overlook it too. But as believers, God should be doing something in our lives daily. So I'd encourage you guys just to be thinking about this. Be praying about it, and keep it at the top of your head, because every Sunday I'm going to be asking you this. And that's fine. If nobody has an answer, that's okay. But I believe that God's going to start revealing to you the amazing stuff he does in your life, and that's when some real serious growth happens. So I have one more question for you guys. What do you think is one of the biggest issues that Christians face in America today? That's a deep one. What do you think? What do you think of some of the biggest issues that Christians face in America today? That was good, right? What do you think? What do we face as Christians? Riley? for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, as Christians, a lot of times people expect us. You have to have this view or this view. If you don't, then clearly you're not a Christian. What else? Yeah, that's always a struggle. Being different is not easy. Tate. Absolutely. He said the influence of wanting to just kind of be part of the crowd rather than stand out on your faith or stand out for your faith. Man, those are some amazing answers. Um, and today we have a very special speaker. Last time I introduced him as my good friend. And we were friends, but we were hardly good friends. So I got a little bit of a hard time for that for a little bit of time. One thing I absolutely love about working here is seeing how God has placed the pastors and the staff in their positions. People at this church are incredibly gifted. And tonight we get to have Dan Franklin, our teaching pastor, talk to us tonight. And I am so thankful. I absolutely love listening to Dan preach and just having conversations with him. He's super insightful, has an incredible biblical knowledge. And so help me welcome Dan Franklin.
Yeah, you got to clap the whole time I'm walking up. It's a long walk. There we go. I just wanted to say what Tim was just sharing with you guys about what you guys are going to do Sunday nights, I think is really cool. I know sometimes some of you may have felt like that question was kind of sprung on you of like, all right, how have I seen God at work? But doing that every week and expecting it. When Karina and I, before we had any kids, we were part of a kind of a bigger small group, probably about the size of this. And the leader of it told us in advance, he said, every week that you come, I'm going to ask you what opportunities God gave you to share your faith this last week. And not only did it make it something where when we came, we were excited to share, but it made it so that the entire week we were sort of more aware. We were like, on Sunday, he's going to ask, and I want to be able to have something to say. And so I just want to encourage you guys. I think that this is going to be something that could be really cool because you'll have this in mind. You'll say, when I get there to Sunday night, I want to be able to say something of ways that I saw God at work. And you're probably going to have your grid up. You're going to have your antennas up a little bit more for that. But yeah, I just want to affirm, Tim is an awesome guy to work with and an awesome leader for you guys. And man, the legend of Tim Longo just like grows. So, obviously Matt and Jack are part of the group, but we have an 8-year-old too, and he knows the legend of Tim Longo. We'll be watching like an episode of Amazing Race, and some guy will be like, I'm doing the Amazing Race even though I'm 70, and David will be like almost as old as Tim Longo. So the legend has spread. It's amazing. He's like 4 years away from the youth group, and he knows the Tim Longo jokes. But I'm excited about this. It's also fun because I got to see some of you guys in the videos that Matt and Jack showed me from Oscar night. McNutt guys, you guys had my favorite video. Loved the TP run. That was epic. And I'm excited because today I get to talk about something that not only are we as a church talking about, but something that churches all over are talking about, and that's the sanctity of human life. I want to we'll talk about some big things, kind of some big topics, including abortion, but it even relates to tomorrow in a way. What's tomorrow? Yeah, Monday, correct. You guys don't have school, so that's a good thing. It's Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Somebody tell me something about Martin Luther King Jr. Yeah? Absolutely. In the 50s and 60s, mostly in the 60s, he was an activist for civil rights. Anybody can, oh yeah? Okay. Youngest to win the Nobel Peace Prize. That's a great little factoid there. Anybody think of, oh yeah, Owen? He was African American. Anybody think of anything famous quotes from Martin Luther King Jr.? There you go. The I have a dream speech, which I know, everybody knows that quote, I have a dream. If you guys listen to the speech, it's incredibly powerful. Just the whole idea of thinking about the idea of people coming together that had been separated. And for you guys growing up at this time, it's got to be weird. When you think back to the 60s and some of the stuff that was going on surrounding the civil rights movement, it can feel like it was just centuries and centuries ago because it feels so different. When you think it was 1968 that Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, that's just over 50 years ago. Your guys' grandparents were, not Tim, right? You weren't born? No, not quite. All right. Lots of people that we know were alive during this time. It wasn't that long ago that there were real issues in our country surrounding segregation and surrounding mainstream thinking that people of different races were almost different species. And it's shocking to us. And at the same time, it's amazing to think in 50 years just how much our perceptions of things have changed to the fact that we could think of that as such a distant, bizarre thing for somebody to believe. That was 1968. And that was right about the time that some major things were changing really for the better in our country surrounding that. Because part of the whole idea of treating people and responding to the sanctity of human life is by looking at other people who are different than us and realizing they are just as valuable to God as we are. We're all created in his image. Now, 5 years after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in 1973, in fact, January 22nd, 1973, was when there was a Supreme Court case called Roe v. Wade, where abortion was now declared to be a civil right, a basic American right in our country. And it's been that way ever since. And during that time, millions and millions and millions of legal abortions have happened in our country. And it's a hot issue. As Riley already mentioned, you guys aren't voting yet, but you're still aware, like, this is a political issue. Well, some of you are. Yeah, Brennan. Yeah, some of you guys are voting. Not you, probably. You look younger than Brennan. It's a hot issue that people feel really strongly about. You guys, no doubt, have had conversations, even in your junior high and high school classes, where people have brought this up, and you've probably heard your classmates debate about this, and you're aware that it's a issue that people feel really deeply about. And it's an important one for us as Christians to talk about, and not just in the theoretical sense, but also in the sense of how we can be a part of it. And I want to start just by talking about, from the big picture, the reason why we as Christians take a strong stand when it comes to abortion is not because we think that women shouldn't have control over their own bodies, and it's not because we just want to tell people what to do or shame people in some way. It's because we believe that every human being is created in the image of God. That includes every one of us under this tent. And some of us might get used to that. For most ancient religions, about the time that the Bible was being written, most ancient religions didn't say that every human being was created in God's image. It would be like the king and the royal family was created in God's image. But the Bible comes up with the reality that we are all created in God's image. The lowest servant, the highest king, no matter what your background, no matter what sins you've committed in the past, no matter how much money you have, that we all are created in God's image. And we also believe that the Bible clearly teaches that that's not something that just starts once you're born. That we have lots of passages in the Bible that talk about the value of human life even before birth. We have Psalm 139 talks about the idea that God has fearfully and wonderfully made us and that he knit us together in our mother's womb. And you guys, if you ever have the opportunity, even just to go on YouTube and search for pictures of the 4D ultrasounds that people are able to do now and see these pictures of babies when they're just developing at the really young stages, it's amazing to watch what's happening and how God is at work there. And some of you guys might know there's this great story in Luke chapter 1 when Mary has just found out that she's pregnant with Jesus, very newly pregnant. She goes to visit her cousin Elizabeth, who's pregnant with John the Baptist. She's 6 months pregnant at that time. And when Mary walks into the room, John the Baptist in the womb leaps up because Jesus is in the room. And Jesus is probably just weeks old in the womb. And what you get is both of them, who are going to be prominent parts of what God is doing, both of them have a moment before they're even born to show their personhood and to show their value. You did not simply become important once you were born. You were important to God, and you were probably important to a lot of other people before you were ever born. And so the reason why we take this so seriously is because we believe God takes this really seriously. And when we talk about this, we'll talk specifically about abortion, but I want to also talk more broadly just about how we treat each other and how we interact with each other, and that for all of us, there are probably people that we very easily just dismiss and disregard because they don't seem valuable to us. And being created in the image of God and believing that about everyone means that anytime we mistreat anyone, God takes it personally. That also means every time you're mistreated, God takes it personally because that's how valuable people are to him. So I don't know how many of you guys have Bibles right now, but if you do have a Bible, you can open up to Proverbs 31. We're going to focus on just 2 verses in Proverbs 31, and it's going to be Proverbs 31, verses 8 and 9. And I'll read them right now. It says, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and the needy." You guys probably heard it there twice. Speak up. How many of you guys like to speak up? All right, maybe a few of you. All right, some of you guys like to speak up. Some of you guys probably are talkers, and some of you guys are probably more reserved. Here's the deal. 2 commands in this passage. Verse 8 and verse 9 both give the command, speak up, which is basically saying there are times where it's important to use your voice. There's times where it's important not to just say nothing, but to actually use your voice. And quick question, are there other times where it's good not to talk? Absolutely. James chapter 1 talks about the idea that there's actually wisdom. We need to be quick to listen and slow to speak. There's times where you should talk, and there's times where you shouldn't talk. And what I'm going to bet is for all of you, some of you like to talk, and you probably err on the side of talking when in doubt, and some of you probably err on the side of being more cautious, and you're not so sure you want to put yourself out there. I want you guys to help me out. I want to play kind of a quick game, a little bit of a survey game called Speak Up or Shut Up. Now here's what it means. I'm going to give you 4 scenarios, and I want you to respond after I say the scenario by either saying speak up or shut up. But here's the key. The key is I want you to say the one not that you think you should do, but that you would be most likely to do in this situation. Don't speak about the ideal version of you, but just, yeah, if that happened, I would probably speak up, or yeah, if that happened, I would probably shut up. Let's take one that's a little bit lighter to start. Let's say there's a conversation that you're having with a bunch of friends about favorite movies and about action movies, and somebody comes up and says, "Oh, you guys talking about movies? I love Darth Vader. He's my favorite Star Trek character." All right, speak up or shut up. Yeah, you guys are like, I tell him to shut up. Like, speak up. You can't let that go. You can't let anybody think that Darth Vader is from Star Trek. You got to speak up. You got to say something. All right, maybe that one's a little bit easy. Let's go on. Let's say you're in class or you're in one of your Zoom classes, and your teacher says, all right, you 6 are all going to break into a group, and you're going to have this group project. Which one of you thinks that you could take the lead and be the group leader with this group? Speak up or shut up. All right, a little bit split. I heard a lot of emphatic shut-ups. People that are like, no way am I putting myself out there in that scenario. All right, number 3. Let's say there's a conversation that breaks out, and use a movie analogy again. Conversation breaks out, and suddenly the subject of your favorite movie comes up, and everybody in the group that's talking about the movie is talking about how dumb that movie is. Your favorite movie of all time, and everybody's talking about how dumb it is. They don't yet know what you think of it. Speak up or shut up. All right, good. You guys are bolder than I was when I was your age. When I was your age, if that happened, my instinct was like, don't let them know. They'll think I'm dumb if I say that I liked that movie. Scenario number 4, and remember, try to answer as you'd most likely respond, not how you feel like you should respond. You're with a group of people. One of the people is getting picked on and getting insulted by everybody else who's there. Nothing terribly vicious, but just kind of picked away at a little bit. You're standing there, speak up or shut up. Yeah. Now, we all know, whatever we do, we all know the right thing to do in that situation, right? Speak up is the right thing to do. We don't always do the right thing there. Sometimes we say, I'm going to shut up because if I speak up, suddenly I'm with this person who's being picked on. And all of it might come towards me, where if I just stay silent and stay anonymous over here, they're going to keep after them and they're going to leave me alone. What we get in this passage is we get the reality that, yeah, there are times to shut up. That there are times where it is wise to listen, to pause, to think before you speak. But there's also times where it's wrong to shut up and where we need to speak up. We need to use our voice. But the thing that's so powerful about this passage is that the writer here isn't saying, stand up for yourself. Which is probably something that you're told frequently by teachers and by parents and other people. Yeah, you need to stand up for yourself and you need to speak up for yourself. And sure, sometimes that's true. You need to speak up for yourself. But that's not what we're told in this passage. Let me read it again. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and needy. Now, let me just give you some quick context, because anytime you're reading the Bible, you want to understand what's going on with what you're reading. This is Proverbs 31. Let me read the first verse, because these are verses 8 and 9. The first verse says that the verses that are about to follow are, the sayings of King Lemuel, an inspired utterance his mother taught him. So here's a king writing this part of Proverbs and saying, I'm going to share with all of you the advice and instructions that my mother gave me. So she's speaking specifically. They're part of the royal family, so she knows the role that he's going to have. She knows that he's going to be a king, and she's given him instructions. You as the king, with all the power and with all the prominence, your job is not to make sure you speak up so that everybody bows as low as they can to you. It's not your job to speak up so that everybody treats you with respect and deference. It's your job to speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. And none of us here are part of royalty. None of us have that kind of clout. But I think there's something really powerful about this passage, because all of us, to one degree or another, I know some of you, and I don't know all of you, so I don't know if some of you have experienced more difficulty in your life than others. The fact is, for all of us living in the United States, we are a privileged people. We've had amazing privileges compared to the average person in the world. So just by living in this country, you've been given privileges. Maybe not quite the privileges of a king, but you've been put in a position where you're more taken care of than the average person throughout human history has been taken care of. And you're put in a position not just to say, well, I'm going to speak up if somebody insults me, or I'm going to speak up if somebody misunderstands me, or I'm going to speak up if somebody threatens me in some way, but instead to say, I'm going to speak up for those who cannot speak up for themselves. And here's I'm going to say a couple more things, but in a second, I'm going to ask you guys to try to think about who might fit into that category of those who cannot speak up for themselves. But first, I don't want us to miss this. He says, speak up for those who cannot speak up for themselves, speak up for all the destitute. And destitute basically means you're desperate and you're hopeless. I want all of you to think for a second. All of us here were desperate and hopeless without Jesus. Some of you may have grown up and you don't have that story where you went off and, you did drugs and they found you in a ditch and had to revive you, and then there was this miraculous thing and you came to faith in Jesus and everything changed. And I didn't grow up with that kind of testimony, and I remember sometimes feeling like, gosh, I wish I had a story like that. Like, I wish I had a story of this dramatic change that happened. But every single person that I talked to who had had that dramatic change said, you do not wish you had this story. There's a lot of pain with that story. But here's my point. You might look at your life and say, it doesn't seem like there was a radical, dramatic thing that God did. But if you are a believer in Jesus, here's what Scripture teaches you. It teaches you that you were hopeless and condemned and heading towards hell before Jesus came for you. You were desperate. You had no ability to save yourself. Your sins were going to condemn you. You were an enemy of God because you decided you had a better idea than God. You were desperate, and God acted. And he didn't have to act. He is the king. He has all the power. He owes us nothing. But he sent his son to be sacrificed for all of us. God spoke up for those who were desperate. And so here's what I'm not saying. What I'm not saying is God did it for you, so you have to do it for other people. But what I want to say is this. If your heart is that you want to show people Jesus, that you want your classmates and you want your neighbors and you want your friends and your cousins and other people in your life, you want them to see and know Jesus. If you want the world to see and know Jesus through us as Christians, so they don't just think of Christians as people who are either holier than thou or politically conservative or whatever it might be. You really want people to see Jesus through us. This is a way that people see Jesus through us. People see Jesus through us when they see that we're willing to use our clout and our status to help other people. And now here, I want to kick it back out to you. He says, speak up for those who cannot speak up for themselves. What might be a person in our society today who would fit in that category, who needs our help because they can't speak up for themselves? Yeah, Jack?
Like, with, like, abortion, like, unborn babies.
Yeah, 100%, which is one of the reasons for this passage for here, where unborn babies literally can't speak up for themselves. When we think of vulnerable people, they'd be at the top of the list. Yeah, Tate? Yeah, absolutely. People who would be afraid to speak up for one reason or another. Yeah? Okay, yeah. And it's interesting. He was saying people who are mutes. Literally, the word, when it says those who cannot speak up for themselves, would be the Hebrew term for somebody who was mute. And so King Lemuel is using that as an illustration. If somebody was mute, they might like it if you said something that they would want to be said. And that's the illustration he's using. Yeah?
Someone that's not there or is not aware.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You might be in a situation where somebody is not there and they're going to end up getting the raw end of the deal because they're not part of something, and you can end up speaking up for them. Let me tell you guys, I shared this story this morning, and I know some of you were there this morning, but about a time when I was not much older than you guys. I was 18, and it was my freshman year of college, so I was right about like almost precisely Brennan's age and Ruby's age. And I had a job between my fall and spring semester, and I was working at this car detailing place, just doing odd jobs. And I had two bosses. I don't remember their names for sure because it was really long ago. But let me just give them names for the story. Let's say there was the owner, that was Cliff. There was the manager, and that was Doug. I think his name actually was Doug, but I don't remember for sure. And so one day, Doug comes to me and says, Dan, I want you to go to the garage and open up all the paint cans and then stir them because the guys later on are going to use the paint on a bunch of cars. And I said, sure. And I went in, found the paint cans, and looked around for a screwdriver so I could open them up. And couldn't find a screwdriver anywhere. And so I went back to Doug and said, Doug, do you have a screwdriver or something that I can use to open up the paint cans? And Doug kind of smiled and said, what are you talking about? You don't need a screwdriver to open those up. You can open those up by hand. Walks back over with me, grabs one of the paint cans and starts to try to open it. And I was so relieved, couldn't even budge the thing. It's just like, and he was this huge guy, couldn't move it at all. And I was like, thank God, it's not just me. And so he was very confused by that. I wasn't confused by that at all. I'm like, who opens a paint can with their fingers? But he was very confused that he couldn't open it up and a little bit frustrated and still not finding the screwdriver. And he set the paint can down and we weren't getting anywhere. So I picked another one up and started to try to open it up with my hands again. And at that moment, Cliff came in and saw us doing this, looked at me and said, "What in the world are you doing? You can't open up a paint can with your fingers." Pulls out a screwdriver, opens up the paint can, and then looks right at me, kind of looks at Doug as if, can you believe this guy? And then he says, "I guess they don't teach you everything at college." And he just laughed at me. And at that moment, who did I look at? I looked at Doug. I was like, dude, in my head, I'm like, dude, time for you to bail me out. This was not, I'm getting made fun of, and this was not my fault. I knew that we couldn't open well. I'm expecting Doug to just stand there and say, "Hey, Cliff, actually, this was my mistake. Dan asked for a screwdriver, and I didn't think that we needed one, so it was my mistake." It would have been pretty simple, but I looked over at Doug, and what do you think Doug said? Yeah, Doug said nothing. He just laughed as if he was in on the joke too. And when Doug said nothing, what do you think I said? Yeah, no, I said, maybe some of you would have done it differently. I said nothing. I just stood there and sort of let it happen. And I was thinking back on that this week. I was like, should I have said something? Was that just me not being bold and holding my ground? And I don't know. If I was able as a 42-year-old to go back into my 18-year-old body, maybe I would have handled it differently. But in the moment, I felt very helpless. I felt like it would do no good to say anything. If I say something and then I sell Doug out, is the rest of my life working for Doug going to be really miserable because he's going to hold a grudge against me? Or am I going to say, actually, it's Doug's fault, and Doug's going to say, you're making it up? I just thought chaos is going to happen if I speak up for myself in this moment. I needed somebody else to speak up for me, and they didn't speak up for me. And I'm scarred to this day. I'm obviously not. There's a lot of injustice in the world as we think of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I don't think the injustice I suffered as an 18-year-old ranks very high on that list. But it still stuck with me. And I think even this week, the reason that story came up is because I was like, wow, that really stung when I needed somebody to stand up for me, and they just hung me out to dry. There are people that we are in a position to speak up for. There are people, and I know school is weird right now with all the Zoom stuff and everything else, but you guys probably know classmates that need you to speak up for them. There might even be fellow students at Exit 83 that you kind of think and say, I need to speak up for them. Not necessarily because anybody's harassing them or being mean to them, but because they don't really speak up, that they're incredibly shy, or they're incredibly reserved, or they just don't have the social skills yet to figure out how to do that. They need me to speak up and include them. When we're in detour groups, they need me to speak up and say, hey, what do you think? Or they need me to do something to help them become included. Or maybe there are people that you're around where you say, no, they really are being mistreated by others, and they need me to speak up and risk my own social status to say, no, you can't treat them in that way. There are people in our society who live their lives and work in situations where they don't speak up, and it's not because they're not brave, it's because the cost is just too high and they're afraid of what will happen if they do speak up. And as Jack mentioned when I asked the question, when we think about the whole subject of abortion, unborn babies cannot speak up for themselves. It's one of the reasons why this passage applies to them so strongly. You have a baby, and the baby is hidden in the womb, and the baby doesn't get a vote. And when we think about abortion, it's really significant that for us as Christians, we look with compassion on any young woman or not so young woman who gets pregnant and is considering abortion, because that's probably a really desperate, vulnerable woman. And at the same time, we don't look at her and say, because you're desperate and vulnerable, that baby doesn't matter. That woman matters, and that baby matters. For those of you who are here this morning, I got to bring up on the stage some people who are involved in this really cool ministry that we support called Assure Pregnancy Clinic, where they do free ultrasounds for women who come in and can't afford them, and they help them find ways to get health care, and they give them pregnancy tests, and then they give them advice, and once the babies are born, they give them baby clothes, and even do parenting classes, and sometimes they do couples classes to help couples that are trying to figure out how to come together on this. It's a powerful thing to be able to stand in the gap and say, we care about everybody involved. We care about the mother, we care about the father, we care about the parents and the grandparents and everybody else, but we care about the baby too, and the baby is hidden, and the baby needs a voice. And we as Christians get to stand up, and we get to be that voice. We get to speak up for the desperate person. And doing this is not always clear. Doing this it's not always as obvious as it is when we're just talking about it right now. I spoke this morning about how just voting is not the only way that you get involved in this issue. Sometimes abortion is talked about as just a political issue. So, vote for the right person, and then you end up kind of doing your job. And I talked this morning about how that's not enough. It should affect the way that we vote, but that's not enough. You guys are not at the point yet where you're voting, and so that's probably not where your mind first goes. But you guys are at a point where, for a lot of you, you're not doing a lot of voting, but you're doing a lot of posting. And social media, sometimes it has this power to make us think that we've done something really brave and good, when all we've done sometimes is copy something over from something else and then hit post. And we've convinced ourselves, I have contributed. I've done something brave. I've done something noble. I've spoken up. Quick question. This is not a trick question. Should your Christian faith influence how you post on social media? All right. God willing. Man, it's got to. And I want to say my generation is not setting you guys a great example on this, sadly. There's a lot of chaos on social media, and people behave differently when they get behind a keyboard or on their phone, and sometimes it's very, very sad. Our Christian faith should impact how we post. But I just believe one of the lies of the enemy, and you guys, because you're growing up in this, like I was an adult before social media became a thing, and so sort of on that cusp of like, this is weird. I thought, this is so dumb. Nobody's going to do this. This is just a flash in the pan, and obviously I was wildly wrong, as it took over the world and everybody got involved with it. For you guys, this is just a reality that you're growing up with. And one of the lies that the enemy is going to constantly try to trick you with is to convince you that just by posting or just by reposting something, then you've done your job. Like, there's racial injustice in the world, copy, paste, post, done. There's abortion in the world, copy, post, paste, did my job. Women should be treated equally with men, copy, post, paste, took care of it. Your Christian faith should influence how you post. Please don't believe the lie of the enemy that once you've posted it, you've done something brave or noble or changed the situation, because most of the time that you haven't. Most of the time when you post something like that, here's what happens. Everybody who already agrees with you says, that was great, that was brave, here's a like, here's a love, here's something like that. And everybody who disagrees with you either says something mean or just ignores it and goes and finds their friends' pages where their friends are saying stuff that they already agree with. This is just a trap that the enemy has us in, and somehow traps us into thinking that we're brave when we're not being brave. So post, think about those things. That's important. That's a way to use your voice. But there's much greater ways to use your voice. And frankly, with just the age all of you are at, the chances that I'm going to be in a conversation with a friend who's considering abortion are much lower than the fact that any of you are going to be in a conversation with a friend who's considering abortion. If it hasn't already happened, probably by the time you're done with high school, it will happen. You'll be in a situation where somebody's talking to you about being in the position to make that life and death decision, and you may have a voice into it. And your voice may be ignored, and your voice may even be called uncompassionate if you speak up. But your voice also might be the lifeline to somebody who feels like they're trapped and has no choice. There's no woman who ever goes into abortion thinking, this is what I wanted for my life. the women who get abortions, who, by the way, by statistics, are mostly Christians. So it's not just like, hey, we're Christians and people out there are having abortions. It's people in our youth groups and it's people in our churches. You may end up being the lifeline to somebody who is desperate and feels like they have no other option. So you are right there on the front lines with an opportunity to speak out. And let me just also share this with you. I know when I was a teenager, it wasn't utterly abnormal to sort of get through high school and still be a virgin and be saving sex towards marriage, but it was not looked at in the same way that it is now, as if you're like a unicorn if you're a virgin and you get through high school of like, oh my gosh, that's bizarre. I understand that the calling that Jeff and Tim and others are talking to you guys about, saving sex for marriage, we're not unaware that this is going against the grain in our culture right now. We get that. But we want to say to all of you, it is worth doing things God's way. God is not arbitrary. He's not just like, there's this really fun thing, but you don't get to do it. God is good, and God's calling for your sexuality is something that's good, and it's setting you up for the best that he has for you. But what I want you to know is, for all of you, I hope all of you save sex for marriage. If you don't, and you end up falling, and you end up getting pregnant, or you end up getting a girl pregnant, I want you to know that your church family does not want you to feel like, well, I got to just hide this because it would be so shameful. And whether or not they've said it to you, I'm just going to make a bet that all of your parents wouldn't want you to hide it because it would be so shameful. Man, Satan gets us in the shame spiral, thinking that we're just the worst person and that nobody's ever done the bad things that we've done. I want you guys to know, if you end up in a situation where you're saying, oh my gosh, I'm going to be exposed. They're going to find out that I've slipped up. They're going to find out that I've had sex, that I've got a girl pregnant, or that I'm pregnant. This is just going to be the worst thing that ever happened. I want to promise you, if that happens, we as your church family will walk with you in this, give you everything that you need. We will not shame you because we care about you and because we care about that unborn baby. And God is an expert in bringing good things out of sinful and bad situations. If you just read the Bible, this is what happens constantly. This is what happened on the cross. The greatest evil that we as mankind ever did was to put Jesus to death, and God brought the greatest good out of it. So if there's a sinful act and you end up saying, gosh, how could anything good come out of me sinning in this way? And God does profound things out of our mess ups. So please don't buy the shame lie and think, I've got to hide this, I've got to cover this up, I'm just going to go and take care of this and nobody will ever know. If you're in that situation, know that your church family will love you, your church family will be there for you, and you can choose life. And here's just one more thing I want to throw out. Some of you, God is going to probably call to be on the front lines of this. One of my favorite things to see, because there's lots of these amazing pro-life rallies and pro-life marches where people are advocating for the unborn. I think my favorite poster that I see frequently, or not poster, sign that I see held up frequently is the sign, I am the pro-life generation. Statistics are showing, man, things are changing. I don't know if it's because we have better ultrasound things where we can just no longer deny that baby is a human being, or I don't know if it's something else or if it's just a work of God, but there are things happening in your generation that are turning on this issue. There are powerful things happening, and God may end up calling some of you, even at a young age, to really be on the front lines, to be involved in this ministry in a powerful way of advocating for unborn children and of walking with people who are in desperate situations. Don't rule that out now and don't rule that out in the future, because not every single one of us is going to be on the front lines of this, but some of you are, and God's going to work in beautiful ways as you do this. You don't have to wait to use your voice. You don't have to wait to speak up. And absolutely, there are times where you should speak up for yourself, where you should make sure that you're telling people that you should be treated as somebody who's created in the image of God. But man, use your voice for those who can't speak up for themselves. Use your voice for those who are too afraid. Use your voice for those who don't have the ability. Use your voice for those who are hidden away and forgotten. And when you do that, you show people a picture of Jesus. So here, let me go ahead and close our time in prayer tonight. Father, I just pray, as I pray, I ask for your mercy on our country, where for almost 50 years we've been living in this reality where we as a country say that it's okay for us to kill our babies. And I know that it grieves your heart, and I pray that you do show us mercy. I pray that you wake us up on a national level. I pray that we would see a time in our lifetimes where this wouldn't be something that's even controversial anymore because it's so clear to us. And I pray for these students. I pray for any of them that either are or will find themselves in a desperate situation, and to think that some kind of act of sin is their only way out of that. I pray that you rescue them from that by the power of your Spirit. I pray that you bring friends and help around them. I pray that your scripture that they're hiding in their hearts right now will come to bear in that time. I pray for each student here that you give them the boldness to use their voice for others, for the shy kids who are forgotten, for the picked on kids who are cast aside, and for the people who can't even have a voice to speak for themselves. I pray that you lead them to be examples of you to others, that others will see Jesus through them and through their lives. And I pray that you lead this group as they look to lean in to sharing with one another how you've been at work and having their eyes open to how you've been at work. And pray this in our Lord Jesus' name. Amen. And Tim, anything else? Can I just close this? Guys, thanks for being here. Hang out.